Welcome to today's ServiceNow Executive Circle podcast. I am joined by Dan Godfrey, the Group People, Transformation and Talent Director at Aviva.
Hi there, Kat. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Before we go into the conversation, let's just start with a little bit around what does a Group People, Transformation and Talent Director do? And just in case anyone's not clear, what is the full breadth of Aviva?
Yeah, so Aviva is a FTSE 100 financial services institution. We've got around about 35,000 colleagues globally, 25 million customers, and we cover the wide range of financial services products. So everything from pensions and investments and wealth management to life insurance, motor insurance, healthcare, you name it.
You name it, you insure it.
Yeah, pretty much.
And your role there?
So my role, I sit within the group people function. So I'm responsible for leadership, learning and talent on one side and recruitment. And I also look after transformation. So my team support the business in driving transformation from a people perspective across the business. And we're supporting with everything from our operating model and our organisation design through to planning our workforce, strategic workforce planning. And I also look after HR change. So we deploy consultants into the different businesses to support with managing change and supporting the HR teams that are dedicated to those business areas. I look after technology, so our people technology across the business and how we enable colleagues to get stuff done. And I look after data, analytics, risk and governance. So all of the components.
You look after a lot.
A lot, yeah. So there are lots of different teams, but the idea is that we all come together in order to drive, the right resource plans, the right capability across the business from a people perspective so we can serve customers.
And obviously there, you said at its core is people, but you look after the role of technology. So what role does technology play in that transformation that you're trying to drive for, at its heart, the people that work for Aviva?
Yeah, I think technology is absolutely core. I mean, I see ourselves as a team, as a people function, and our CIO colleagues as being two sides of the same coin ultimately. And obviously that's become even more important over time. So with the recent addition of AI over the last couple of years and its prevalence, then that's come to the fore and is obviously another consideration in driving transformation. But when we're thinking about new operating models, new ways of working, we have to think about technology alongside that to ensure that we're driving efficient ways of doing things, that our processes are simple and straightforward, and that ultimately we're getting the outcomes we need.
And obviously you've had a fantastic career. You've worked for a number of different organisations, public sector as obviously as well as private sector, FTSE 100s and in high growth environments. What have you learned and what challenges have you overcome in that career that you bring to yourself and your role today that you think is so prevalent?
Yeah, so from an AI perspective, obviously that's quite recent. So my most recent experience at Aviva is probably most relevant in that respect. But having worked across, as you say, different sectors, I would say from a public sector perspective, obviously budgets are a lot more scarce. So investment is more difficult to come by. Procurement is centralised. Platforms and technology sit across multiple government departments, and so progress is understandably slower. If you're talking about startups and private equity, then, they're normally better placed to embrace technology because they haven't got any of the legacy issues associated with processes and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, the focus is largely on making a profit, getting to market, making sure that, the business is viable and sustainable and all of that kind of stuff. And so the amount of investment, certainly from a colleague perspective, that you can put into things is slightly tempered, but it makes you more inventive and more creative. There's no doubt about that. But in Aviva, I mean, we've obviously got 325 years of operation, and we've got legacy challenges in relation to, acquisitions and all of those sorts of things. And so, there's quite a lot of work that needs to go into the operational readiness for embracing new technology and that sort of thing. And there's significant investment associated with that. And so obviously things are more planful. We need to be more thoughtful about when we're going to do stuff, our priority in relation to doing stuff, and then how we work together to make it happen. But I think overwhelmingly the stuff that I've probably learned along the way is where you can, do not customize platforms, because over the long term it's more expensive. It means that it's much harder to drive change as a consequence and take upgrades and updates and all of that kind of stuff. To think about the operational readiness before you start to go on, any kind of transformation journey, and think about, what sits around the periphery. The adoption angle is a really important one, and often gets, left behind or thought about right at the end of a program. And actually, you need to be thinking about how do you adjust ways of working, and how do you think through, upskilling and reskilling and that kind of journey to make sure that people can actually adopt what you've got at the end of it. And test. I think before you go live, make sure that you've tested it and made sure that it's going to deliver what you need, particularly in the customer space. But colleagues can be just as demanding too.
Yeah, definitely. And so obviously thinking about that operational readiness and testing and wanting to make sure that what you do get out of the box, because you don't want to customize, is the right thing. How do you go about evaluating AI, particularly today's role in that talent, that learning, that development for the people, especially when it's tying in so much more today in terms of employees' performance? How do you evaluate that?
It's a really good question. I don't know that there is a simple answer overall. So I can go to where are we thinking about deploying AI? And I think it comes back to business readiness overall, because clearly there's a significant investment associated with utilizing AI. And you need to be prepared in relation to your data and your processes, and have given some thought to how you're going to operationalize it before you go to implement anything. And so where I suppose I've seen things go slower than we would like is where we haven't paid attention to those things overall. I think, when we're thinking about ensuring that, from a governance point of view, we're getting the right outcome from AI, then, we're thinking about ensuring there's, a human in the loop and somebody's evaluating the outputs that they're getting. Again, that we're not exposing customers to, any unnecessary outcomes or risks as a consequence to it. So our journey, whilst it's ambitious, has been sort of cautious and thoughtful. And, we've been looking across the business at different potential opportunities to do it. From a customer perspective, we've had some success. So we've looked at our claims area. Claims handling is actually quite complicated. You're drawing on multiple sources of data, including, thinking about fraud. And so being able to summarize information quickly just enables us to serve customers more quickly. And as a consequence, drive up better customer experiences. From a people point of view, and we're still early days, but, clearly organizations are now thinking more about skills and skills for the future. And so being able to surface skills, both from a colleague profile perspective, so what do colleagues bring to the organization, as well as what are they gaining through being part of the organization, and then looking at your job architecture and what sits in the background in relation to the skills appropriate for each role. We're thinking about how we use AI to match those two things together so that we can help colleagues find career paths. And ultimately get, learning and development and associated stuff that will help to drive that. I think from a workforce planning point of view, we can also use that kind of information to look at, externally, where are skills sunsetting, where are we needing to invest in skills, whether competitors are investing in skills, or whether, the way that people are recruiting is changing because new skills are becoming more prevalent. And so that will, trigger us to have a look at our current operating model and, do we need to do stuff differently? So AI has definitely got application from a colleague and from a customer perspective, but I think it needs no less kind of consideration in relation to sort of implementing it.
And one such way of obviously looking at new skills is obviously the apprenticeship levy that encourages employers to invest in training and development. Aviva's previously mentioned its investment into this initiative. How do you think the levy model needs to evolve, though, to stay as relevant as it can in this fast-changing world, especially with technology like AI, bringing those skills into the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, apprenticeships are a brilliant, mechanism for us to be able to, bring in new talent and to upskill our existing workforce. So I don't think we'll change the way that we use apprenticeships in that context. But with the recent change in government, the new skills strategy that's been brought to the fore, the Institute of Apprenticeships and Technical Education have been replaced by Skills England. They're thinking about how they can use the levy more flexibly to enable businesses, like us, to take advantage of training in areas like technology, where things are moving so fast. Standard apprenticeships would potentially find it difficult to kind of keep up and to keep reinventing the materials that they are pointing students to. And we, as a big employer and as a large organisation in the city, have joined the Financial Services Skills Council in helping them think through how we might want to use this kind of funding in order to drive our own productivity and ultimately the success of the industry. And so I sit on their board, and we're currently supporting them in some of that thinking along with their other members. But the short courses that are being proposed as the way that it's currently being thought about could be delivered by, organisations such as Microsoft, perhaps as yourselves, and it may well be sector agnostic, because I think some of the challenges actually are very common in enabling us as a workforce, if you like, to get up to speed with, how to utilise new technology, prompt engineering, all of that kind of stuff, and establishing use cases. And then at the back end, the people that need to configure this stuff, that are thinking about data, that are thinking about cyber, to prepare themselves for much greater levels of adoption. So I think there is change underway as it is. I think it's a very valuable mechanism, but we need to enable us to move a bit more, with a bit more fleet of foot potentially in doing so.
Do you find that hard to look at your own HR roadmap when it does change from month to month, year to year? Is it difficult to put a pin in that roadmap?
Is it difficult to put a pin in the roadmap? I mean, we're guided by the business really in relation to sort of its aspiration and the pace at which it wants to go. And different parts of the business are going at different speeds depending on, the challenges that they're grappling with. So, our planning is very much rooted in what the business wants to deliver. We take part in creating that plan, and so we can feed into it. But we can only really go as fast as as the business needs to.
But I guess also the wider sector. So from an insurance perspective, I guess you need to look at the outside, the sort of the macro trends that are impacting the world of insurance, how you're going to be supporting customers, and then how you yourself, Dan, are then supporting employees that can meet that thing. So it's almost a bit of a domino effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in the world of insurance out there that you feel you need to be equipping your employees and your teams more?
Well, I think the overarching trend is towards, having more, digital mechanisms through which colleagues can interact with you. And that is ultimately driving, operating model change and, transformation across the industry. Whether that's having, our new My Aviva app, which will enable you to see all of your products in one place, and get prompts in relation to renewal and all of that kind of stuff. We're thinking through how do we become more accessible? How do we bring more of our products and services to market? And of course, that has a roll up or an impact, if you like, on colleagues and the way that we service this sort of stuff as a consequence. So, we're thinking through our back end technology so that colleagues can do that. And we're obviously having to think about data as a mechanism through which, we bring customer information to those colleagues. And so simplifying our data estate and upgrading our platforms overall. I mean, I'm not qualified to talk about that. It'll be our colleagues in CIO would be much better placed to do it. But there's an awful lot of work that is going into, almost like upgrading the business. But it's really critical that we do it. Because ultimately customers want us to do it. And where we're based in the UK and Ireland, it's more prevalent because, in Northern Europe and in these regions, then being able to communicate with us through digital means is more important. In Canada, it's probably less important. They still do a lot of intermediated business, so through brokers and through the high street and that kind of stuff. But but we're still considering our transformation journey in those spaces and seeing, how we keep up with consumer trends and expectations overall, and how we make sure that obviously we utilize all of the good, ways in which we're driving intelligence through the business to drive better outcomes for customers there anyway.
And there's a lot of misunderstanding around AI as well. Do you ever have those in your team coming to you, sort of questioning it? I mean, there's a lot. Are they going to replace is a chatbot going to replace my job in the contact center, etc.? How do you tackle those kind of questions internally?
Yeah, we definitely get them. I think the best quote that I've heard is that you're unlikely to be completely replaced by AI in isolation, but you are likely to be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI. And so we've been on a journey of upskilling colleagues and making sure that they can utilize some of the basic tools that help with productivity across Microsoft 365, Copilot, all of those sorts of things. I think our job is to stay ahead of where we're likely to see impact in the workforce, and to be communicating what that impact is likely to be, and also to help colleagues see the opportunity. So, there's lots of conversation about how the workforce is going to change, how roles at the bottom of the organization are likely to disappear, and so some of those entry points might be more restricted in the future. I think that remains to be seen, because the people that we bring in at the bottom of the organization that learn our business, that learn our customers, that learn our products, are ultimately going to be required to handle referrals, to improve the capability that we've got through AI. And so I can see jobs augmenting and I can see jobs reducing, but I personally can't see those entry-level jobs disappearing, because you need the expertise that is generated by pushing people through those routes.
Yeah.
And it's still a very rich and important mechanism for us to bring diverse teams into the business, and so they play a really critical role. So our job is to help colleagues see the journey at all points, and obviously avoid some of the sort of sensational conversation out there about us all being replaced and ultimately managed by robots.
Exactly. But we talk about artificial intelligence. There is always a place for human intelligence, and as you mentioned before, human in the loop. So like you say, it's augmenting what's needed.
I think you make a really good point, actually, and that there is a lot in our customer contact that is sensitive, that is difficult. When customers are having a traumatic time, when they ultimately need us, they don't want to discuss that with a chatbot. No. They want to speak to a human, and they want to realize that we understand, and also a lot about assessing those sorts of difficult situations is a very human thing. And so whilst we'll probably augment, as you say, and improve the journey with AI, I can't see it completely replacing that.
No, exactly. I mean, you think about sort of the sentiment analysis, you could start with a chatbot, but as soon as it sort of picks up on someone's tone of voice, certain keywords and phrases, thinking about, my mother-in-law needing to obviously change her policy when her husband passed away, that's the minute that human intelligence can flick in and actually swap out with the chatbot. So.
Yeah, and these moments of truth are not going to change, and so we're absolutely still going to need to have a person there ready to take those calls.
Yeah. So you talk about journey. You talked about journey from where we've been to sort of where we are now. Thinking about sort of like the future, and if budgets and regulation and time, nothing was an issue. What's sort of the one people-focused innovation that you would love to invest in to prepare your organisation, your teams for the next decade?
Well, the organisation, I think, so to prepare the organisation, I think the thing that I would most like us to get to is, having, really clearly mapped skills and capabilities across our estate, so that we can help colleagues to see career paths and opportunities, and that we can move colleagues carefully and ensure that they continue to have long careers with us, because we're very fortunate that people stay with us for quite considerable time. And so, enabling us to stay ahead of the game and to upskill our workforce, I think, is going to depend on our adoption of AI to enable us to do that. So and I think we're on with that, actually. So I'm probably not being as creative as I could be, but I think that's a really critical thing for us organisationally. I think outside in the the landscape, just thinking about or for customers, thinking about what would be good for them. I mean, I still think financial services and financial products feel inaccessible to people, and there are so many legacy variations, and there's obviously regulation and all of that to contend with. Financial education is a really sort of challenging space, and I don't think most people know how to drive their financial health still. And of course, the lucky few can go and see a financial advisor, but by and large, I think people don't know perhaps what they've even got in terms of financial products. I think being able to bring information to people using AI and searching the type of product that they have, where they're invested, how that could be improved, I think could be completely game changing.
Yeah.
For customers, and I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I love that sort of the technology that can break down that barrier between, the high street's very different. You can no longer walk into a high street bank and just ask someone a question about a mortgage or your savings account. But actually, it might not exist on the high street, but the technology can break down that barrier, so you can become even closer to understanding, getting the information that you need to make your financial decisions.
Yeah, and I think people worry about how they look in asking really simple and straightforward questions, and I think as
you can
well,
ask ChatGPT lots of stupid questions if you want to.
Exactly. And in your own time, because time is also a challenge for people. So.
I love your point there about the careers as well, because it's not a straight line anymore. We always talk about squiggly careers and things, and I think that's such a fantastic ethos of Aviva, that you're embracing and allowing and using technology to analyse people's skills, to help them understand that squiggly journey, because it's not a straight line.
Yeah, and we want people to have a squiggly journey, because actually, whether you have an aspiration to be in a leadership role at some point or not, your capability in that leadership space is going to be directly, impacted by, how many different scenarios you've come across, how many different, roles you've built your expertise in. So I think it's really, really critical.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you sometimes forget to put certain points on your CV, but if you've got technology and agentic and generative AI that can analyze some of the work you've done, it will actually pull out probably the things that you kind of thought weren't really significant, but actually are significant in making you who you are, that could influence a future career.
Yeah, and the challenges with that, obviously we don't think about the skills that we have, and it's as important for leaders to understand this new language of skills, because again, they haven't really had to think about it. And there are lots of consulting firms that sort of build portfolio careers through the different exercises that they do, and are utilizing this capability already. I mean, some of the really sort of snazzy stuff that I've seen, actually just by job title, looks at how out there in the marketplace roles are being constructed at a task level, at a skill level, which enables us to sort of think about our roles in that context, where we're utilizing certain skills based on tasks, etc., and build out this map of the organization. So yeah, it's super exciting stuff.
Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us on today's podcast. This has been fantastic.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.